Like, why is everybody pointing to me? I've never run a public
You didn't
company.
even live in Las Vegas at the time.
Well, that didn't matter. But it's like, I don't know anything about running a public company or or a casino. And they're like, yeah, but you won't steal from her. And that's what we need right now. And specifically, Seth spent a lot of time going through our archives here and finding some footage, some of which has never been seen before. Other things were part of the museum exhibit. And I will talk through the whole thing because that's what I do best. Okay, so this was the making of the museum. This film was put together on the hotel, the building of the museum, which when you were waiting in line to go into the museum in Las Vegas here, this was a video that you would have been watched. It was narrated originally by Rip Taylor, and there was some music behind it. That's Jerry Wunderlich standing there with me. That's Emmett Alston there. There's Henry Catrona sitting there. We were editing. That's, of course, yours truly. And this was kind of a virtual reality set. This was a 30-foot carousel that had these costumes on it, and then you would run the film clip in the background, which was really the first time any of this was ever done. But when you sat in the theater, you would, for the first time ever, for many people, see very large images of your favorite film, and the costumes would appear all around you. Anyway, so that was part one of the video. That was what was used, and that was a big deal in those days to have a graphic like that.
Well, let me just say that, I was not around for those days. I mean, I was on the planet, but I wasn't part of your family. And to see those costumes presented in the way they were, it was remarkable because when I look at these films, and I talked to so many people that did go to the hotel back in the day, and those carousels, that one carousel is 30 feet wide, and it was split up to how many sections?
5 sections.
5 sections. So there would be 5 different costumes that you could see.
5 sets.
5 sets.
With the Monroe, there were actually 5 Monroe costumes, and then we ran a compilation of those 5
So you
films.
would watch this big clip of these costumes, and then all of us on this big movie screen, and then all of a sudden it would cut to this 30-foot carousel, and the carousel would rotate, kind of like the stage in Les Mis. We had like 3 different sets on it.
I stole the idea of
And
the
so
set.
the light would hit the set, and the costumes you just watched in this film would come to life right in front of your very eyes. To this day, I have never seen anything like that in a museum.
No,
And
no
I
one
mean,
ever.
even if you went to the museum in Los Angeles right now, the Academy Museum, it's like you see the costumes, but you single-handedly with your team thought this up, put it together, and made it happen. And it made your mom so happy. And I think we still have all those carousels.
Yes, we do.
And so, when I think about, we have to store everything, of course, because it's huge. But we still have those. I would love to see those go back into play, because what a magnificent way to look at your favorite movies, and then boom, there they are, in these sets, and the carousel would switch into the next set for the next film clip. I think that's just kind of hard to wrap your mind around, the fact that you got to do all that at your mom's hotel when there's never been anything like it since that I've ever seen.
Well, she had hired a high-end museum person to come in, and I wasn't going to do the museum. I was just doing the showroom. And he submitted all of these drawings to her of this static museum where you would just look at costume after costume hanging on a wall. No clips, no nothing, and I was like, kind of what the Academy does it now.
Right.
And I thought, oh, that's just so boring and certainly doesn't represent the magic of the industry. So I decided to do something much more alive, and that's where the carousel came from. I actually stole the idea from the General Electric Theater at Disneyland when I was a little boy. The audience actually turned around the stage. But the reason why I did is because we had a limited amount of space, and we were trying to figure out how to get the most on display as possible. Even at that, we were only going to have maybe 10% of the collection on display at any given time. So by using the carousels in a small space, all of a sudden I was showing, many, many, many different films where you would normally just have room for 1 or 2, and all of a sudden I could get 8 things and do 8 films. So that was the goal. So because I never got to see it myself. So when a person came in to the museum,
they would, what was the first thing they saw?
Well, you would wait in line and get your ticket, and then you would be seated in a 100-seat theater. And you were sitting in a theater, and all the drapes were down, so you had no idea what you were going to see.
Right.
The first thing would happen is my mother would, the big screen would be exposed, and my mother would come up on a 16-foot screen with this costume on right there. The green, in fact, I believe it's this camera.
This one
no,
here?
actually right there. There you go. So that costume, that little green outfit was what she was wearing in the video. We're going to see it, I think. And then she would explain and take you through why she collected and what you were about to see, and then started to do she was your curator. She took you through the collection. And all of the windows and curtains around you would open up at the appropriate time while you were watching these film clips. And it was kind of magical. Now, when that was all, and we took you from the silent era, as far to the Monroe era is where we kind of stopped it. Then her voice would go to the rear of the theater, and you would be exiting your seat, and you'd go through a traditional walkthrough exhibit, although we still had monitors and other additional
showing the
things.
costumes in action.
Not everything, by the way, because in those days, this is all very complex. This was the first high-definition theater ever built, much less Vegas, of course, but it was pretty unusual. Anyway, let's go back to video. We have a lot of videos, and I'll explain things as we go. So go ahead and launch that thing off, open, and then you would see the costumes. So there's Ava Gardner's and Howard Keel's costume from Showboat. So while you were in your seat, you'd be watching the clip, and you could look to your left and see their costumes. And that was a pretty unique way to do things.
I just got goosebumps at that. That was
Now
so
here's
great.
Cleopatra for an example. So many people had never seen Cleopatra, on a big screen. And then while you were doing that, you would see Cleopatra's outfit and her headdress, and even her, we call it a sedan chair today, but they used to carry her around in these thrones. And so this was off to your right. So the wall, literally, this was such a big set that the whole wall would open up. And there's how the West was won, and the entire left side of the room opens up. And then one at a time, as you would see the different clip, you would see Jimmy Stewart's costume. There's Jimmy Stewart's costume, and to his left is Carol Baker's costume. And then as the clip was progressing, then you would light up other people. So like to Jimmy Stewart's left is Gregory Peck's costume, and my mother's costume to the left. That's John Wayne's Civil War costume on the right. And all of these backdrops were hand painted, and all the set decorating was done. And you'll notice how the mannequins have acrylic heads and hands. There's Gregory Peck and my mom's costume right there. So you'd be watching the great scene from How the West Was Won, and then you would be able to see the actual costume from that. So in this case, these are not carousels. These are big, big entire walls that would open and close.
Born Norma Jean Baker, but we all knew her as Marilyn Monroe. In 1956, Marilyn played a simple-minded cafe singer in Bus Stop.
This was one of my favorite costumes.
Me too, I remember.
It was so cute.
I remember seeing it.
So this costume was really just to the left of the screen, and the light, of course, would
She
hit
brought
that.
a special personality and glamour to the movies that made her one of Hollywood's all-time top attractions and a screen legend. Well, it's time to say goodbye. I hope you've enjoyed seeing some of the original costumes and memorabilia from a few of Hollywood's greatest films. You've seen only a fraction of our collection, which will be rotating periodically to create a new presentation featuring more great stars. In the final part of our show, our walkthrough exhibit, you'll see more costumes worn by such famous stars as John Barrymore and Catherine Hepburn and Tyrone Power and Norma Shear and Leslie Howard, Betty Davis and Charles Boyer, just to name a few. This museum is the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. And with God's help and a lot of hard work and talented friends, we did it. Thanks for being here. That means you care as much as I do. And without you, there'd be no museum. Bye for now. Thanks so much.
Now you see, she's actually in a virtual reality, which had never, this is the beginning of that technology. It had not been done before. So she's actually on the set where Monroe's costumes were. she's talking to the audience as a curator or a docent would do in a museum.
Right.
And a lot of people, it was so realistic looking. A lot of people actually, you know, it took them a minute to realize that it was not Debbie. But one thing that was, and also we shot all of Debbie's sequences in film on a historic 35 millimeter camera that was very much the same kind of cameras that all these movies were shot with, using, ironically, the Godfather lenses. Although at the time we weren't making a big deal out of that. But the camera was actually a camera that Orson Welles had used. And of course had been used on 4 or 5 of my mother's movies.
Well,
as well.
you know, I feel a little choked up because to see that, because that's the first time I've
Well,
ever
you're
seen
hearing
that
it
footage.
in her words.
Yeah, and
you know.
and I miss her, and you know, but it's just, I think that's why I'm choked up. But it's so beautiful to see her, because her dream was being realized at a certain level at that point. You know, like that was
no,
huge.
it was. We were completely satisfied. I mean, it wasn't as though, you know, I'd taken it as far as we could take. We had a limited budget, but I took it pretty far, and we were very satisfied. It wasn't like at any moment you would not have caught us sitting around going, well, we aren't going to be able to do this or that. I mean, we really did what we wanted
John
to
Eric
do.
St. James just said, there are no words. This is incredible, and that's how I feel too, seeing this, because you know, today, in today's technology, what would be incredible, that would just be enough for me, but what would be amazing, and what would be done in today's technology would be, what do you call it, when it's like a 3D?
Yeah, the Musion technology. The
Musion,
3D
yeah.
stuff,
And I just feel like that this dream is not over yet. That's how I feel. I know that we don't have all those costumes anymore, but we do have a lot of great costumes.
What you just
And
saw,
all
though,
of her costumes and a lot of other things, artifacts, you know. So I feel like this dream is not over yet. That's how I feel.
One of the, what you just saw, of course, was chopped down. I mean, the show was about 40-something minutes, almost 50 minutes long in that theater, because we did 1 hour cycles. So the sit-down part in the theater was, you know, a 1 hour turnaround. Every hour on the hour, 16 hours a day. So that show was a machine, in effect. It was fully automated, required very little personnel, but it was an entertaining show. But what you just saw, though, was it's jumping around. I mean, by the way, we filmed the entire show. So you have the whole, I do have a film of what you experienced if you were in the audience. Now, the next thing we're going to run for you is actually the opening night of the museum. And this is hosted by Robert Osborne, who came in for my mother to be the host. And it is also a premiere style, like Academy Award style opening. And a lot of my mom's friends came. And I think we should just let it speak for itself. Hit it.
See a car arriving. Look at that car. Wow. Debbie Reynolds. Here's the lady that put it all together. 25 years she's been collecting material for this museum.
Flanked by these guys in red suits. Isn't that great?
Guys from the show.
Debbie Reynolds.
Yeah, her show guys, that's great.
Happy birthday, yes.
That's
it's
me
Debbie's
walking by on
birthday
the right.
today.
Aww.
April 1st.
You know, this is Robert Osborne, who's this very special friend, flew all the way from New York to be with us tonight. Isn't that sweet? We love you. We love you.
Oh, look how young and handsome he is.
And everybody's going to come and see the museum starting tomorrow, as we said, at 9 a.m. I saw it today, and it's really extraordinary. This has been a long-time dream of yours, certainly.
Well, see, I love every piece in there because I saved it when they said it was a bunch of junk. And now everybody wants to buy the junk. Isn't that nice?
Valuable junk, yes.
Well, it is interesting, I guess. The older things get, I think we appreciate all the history of the golden era. I know you do, Robert. And I know all you folks love all those great old movies, don't you?
Yeah. And
Here
here
he is, ladies and gentlemen.
Rodney Dangerfield and his wife, Joan. Okay, we now have two of my favorites, Angie Dickinson and Earl Holliman, the stars of Policewoman.
Here they come.
Oh, here we have
There's
my
Rick.
darling girlfriend. You know who I'm talking about, anyway? I say,
Ella. Eva Gabor.
Ava Gabor.
Hello, darling. Eva Gabor. Is she beautiful, sweetheart?
Does she do an imitation of you? Has she ever done one of you?
Yes, she does me.
You do the best Gabor.
She sings Tammy.
Ava Gabor, everyone.
Eva,
Oh,
my
she's
darling.
beautiful.
You finally done enough and great. Isn't Debbie fantastic to do this? This is like old Hollywood used to be before we were alive. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you very much. Well, hasn't this been a special time? You know, it's the first time I think I've really felt complete in many, many years. Finally, the dreams that I've had for so many years are all completed with tonight because of my son, Todd Fisher. Come on up here, Todd. You know, Todd likes to stay in the background. There he is. The enchiladas. Oh, he's going to climb over his own footlights. Grab on now.
That's right. No, I don't want to pull you in with me in case I go. Has anybody had the roast beef?
No, it's the enchiladas were fabulous,
Yeah, you
weren't
wanna
they?
bite?
But I mostly am very proud tonight, truly, that my son did allow my dream to happen, because it wouldn't have happened without that idea, you know, about the stages moving and how to present things in a very small place. How could you do that? How did you dream about that?
It was just a simple matter of her collecting this stuff and turning it over to somebody who is a product of Hollywood inbreeding, and then out comes a multimedia museum. So if you hadn't have married Eddie and had been a bartender, then maybe you would have had a walk-through museum.
I don't know that Eddie had much to do with it other than but I'm very proud of my son. I think he is brilliantly gifted.
Oh,
Even his lips, I remember those lips. That's why I married the old fart.
I'm glad you got something out of the deal.
It was just a day. Todd, do you want to say anything to anybody special, your crew?
I've done everything and said everything I could say by building the museum, and I know no finer person on this earth to do these things for than you.
Thank you. Thank you, Todd.
Back to the enchilada.
now I need a ShamWow because that just really got. You know what? I just want to get personal for a second because, yeah, I'll take whatever you have because, as long as it didn't have silver polish on it, it doesn't
has
really
a
matter.
little coffee is all.
Okay, I'm good. Your mom was an extraordinary person, and I just feel so blessed that I got to have her in my life, you know, and for what we did and to get to know this incredible woman. But she loved you so much and you loved her so much, and I've always said, and I believe it with all my heart, you know, that if you meet a man who loves his mother, you are looking at how he's going to treat you, and it is really, really true. It's so important, you know, and one of the things that I was so attracted to you about in the beginning was that you loved your mother and still do so much and honor your mother, and she was the number one in your life, and Carrie was, you know, the number two in your life, and anybody that stepped into this position that I so happily stepped into had to know that those two ladies were going to always be one and two, and you know, I was so happy to be in their shade, you know, so to speak, because there is nothing like a man that honors his mother, and to see that clip just got me because she loved you so much, you know, and you loved her so much, and an extraordinary relationship. And I'm so grateful because I am the beneficiary of that kind of love from you today, and she taught you how to love like that. So I'm so grateful to her, and I remember all the talks we had. Sorry, I have, I literally have a sham wow. So I'm so grateful for all the talks that we had about you, your mom and I, and she would tell me what kind of a man you are, and she was right the whole way, you know. So thank you for loving your mother, and thank you for still loving and honoring your mother. I just think it's so great, and I feel so lucky to be a part of it, and I'm so happy that we have a show to share these things with people that care so much still.
That footage that you saw just then has never been shared.
Yeah.
We shot
I've never seen it. That's my first
Well,
time.
we filmed it at the opening of the museum.
Yeah.
And it was a big, big party, really, is what it was. You see, many of her friends came, and you'll see some interviews, I think, later. Roddy McDowell was there. You know, you had Esther Williams and Ann Miller. All of the posse was there.
Yeah.
You know, and we partied big time because it was a big milestone, and you know, and it was her lifelong dream, and there it was. You know, it had finally come to pass without any help from the industry, ironically, other than Elizabeth Taylor buying some things for her and her friends showing up to the events. Nobody had kicked in anything, and there was a lot of reasons over the years why she could have given up way earlier, but there it was. So it survived for like 4.5 years or something like that. And then unfortunately, due to bad marriages, we were going to suffer additional losses. But anyway, you're getting a chance to see some footage that no one had ever seen.
Yeah.
And,
oh, it just hit me so hard in a good way, but, you know, very, very incredible, you know, and just a lesson for every woman, you know, that's ever going to go on a date with a man is to pay attention to that, because that's what that is. You know, it's just so beautiful, that kind of love. Are there any more clips?
Yes, there's
Oh,
one
I'm
more
so
clip.
happy. This is the first time I'm seeing any of this. So I'm just in awe of this footage.
all right, well, let's roll into the next piece.
Okay.
All my life, I've hoped that there would be a three-dimensional museum, which is the hardest thing in the world to do, and the most difficult thing to preserve those artifacts. And here it is. I can't think, it's impeccable.
The amount of costumes and the preservation and the presentation is mind-boggling.
The music, the staging, what they've done with it, with the picture, with the digitally, what they've done. It's just incredible. It's fantastic.
It's thrilling. I love the films that they used. I love the way the revolving. I didn't know what to expect. I thought I would walk through and just see costume after costume after costume behind a glass. That's all I thought it was.
Everything is done so smartly. The use of the clips and the choices of the clips. I can tell anybody that is going to be in Las Vegas, you must see this because it's so worthwhile.
I didn't think it would be this good. It's just unique. There's nothing like it. I've been to a lot of different events and things all my life, but I've never seen anything done so well as this.
The thing that she did with the film, you know, so you saw those old film clips, and then suddenly you saw the costumes, and it was just incredible. I thought that it was really, really well done. It was magical.
The work that she's done, the love that she's put into this, to think that if she hadn't done this, and of course we're talking about Debbie, it would have been lost to everybody, and especially the younger generation. I mean, we remember it, you know, because we saw it. But for the younger people to be able to come in and see all of this stuff, it's something that I just think is phenomenal. I just think it's monumental what she's done.
Nobody will be disappointed. It's even better, more tasteful, more thoughtfully planned than anything I have ever seen on our industry.
Debbie has a gem, a treasure trove, an historical masterpiece that just is beyond anything I've ever experienced.
that you see the costumes and then you see the film, and you got to come and see it. That's all I have to say.
I don't know where Ava ends and Seth Robichaux begins. It's like I have Seth in my ear all day with that accent, so it's so great. May I just say, Angie Dickinson, who is in her 90s now, I think really up in the 90s, I wanted to be Angie Dickinson when I grew up. I wanted to be Pepper from Police Story. And it's just so great to see all these people. Someone asked me if that was Esther Williams that was on there, and that's a yes.
Yes.
But, you know, to see them, so how many years ago is this? 40, maybe 35?
Yeah. Well, not 40, it's 35.
35 years ago. To see everybody, that's why I love film so much, because, you know, people are frozen in time, and you get to, but to see them being themselves, and being so excited about the museum. Pat Morita, I mean, you know, I'm sorry, but every one of them just means something to me, you know,
Well,
so.
Pat was local, you know, he lived in Vegas, he came to the hotel all the time. You notice that they had the little button on,
Yeah.
the little blue
Yes.
film strip button
Yes.
that we've occasionally given away or auctioned off or whatever. So that we had some of those pins from that opening that survived.
Right.
And that sign right there, if you show that sign, just hold that up
This
for a
one?
second. Yeah, just bring it up on your...
On my camera?
She's got a letter there. If you come down a little bit so we can see Debbie.
You got it.
So there's Debbie holding the Debbie Reynolds Drive sign, which was the sign at the hotel. And then there's a letter from the governor, I believe was Pete Wilson, was it? Oh, Miller, Bob Miller, excuse me. That was the California guy. Anyway, Miller was the Nevada governor who came and then lifted up a little higher, and you'll see that's him at the christening of Debbie Reynolds Drive.
You.
And yeah, my mom and I were there for that naming the street. And that street is still there to this day. There was some effort at one point to get rid of it, of which I promptly went down and sat there and stared at everybody.
And let's not forget that also the public, you know.
Oh no, there was an upheaval.
There was, showed up to keep that sign because someone bought the property and they're turning it into something eventually, like something special, I'm sure. But they were going to get rid of the street. No! But the public rallied, you showed up and took care of business, and I love that.
Well, I mean, I just sat there. I remember I didn't have to say a word because what happened, just the fact that I was there, they knew what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sitting there. The public was packed in this hearing room, and it's like they threw in the towel before anybody got a chance to do anything because they knew that they were going to get eaten alive.
Right.
So, to be fair, they, you know, the writing was on the wall, but they also did the right thing in the end, and they said, well, whatever you want to do, we're going to roll with that. I mean, are you going to erase Debbie Reynolds, at that time, the only woman casino owner in the history of Vegas?
Right.
The other thing we have, go to the close-up camera a second.
Now, we want
So that was my card, by the way. I happened to look at the card right there. That's my hotel card.
Oh my gosh.
I found that in the drawer. Look and check this out.
That's beautiful.
But this is the Gaming Hall of Fame. Oh shoot, you better just go to my camera because it's too big, heavy. I don't break my arm. This was her award when they inducted her into the Gaming Hall of Fame, and that's kind of a big deal as well. So this was Las Vegas, and they're just not. There are no. I think 2 women are in there. It's like a men's club of some sort. Which is not right, of course.
Okay, and before we move on, because we do have to move on for time, but here's the thing. Your card, I was just looking at it, and it says Todd Fisher, Chief Executive Officer. Now, that's another thing I think that just strikes me so crazy, because you, for your mother, stepped into a role you had never played. That's a huge responsibility to become CEO of a hotel museum. And
it was a public company.
How did you do it?
Well,
how did you do it? That's what I do.
It's worth the story because it all began, of course, because we were in big trouble with Hamlet having stolen all the money and had left us in an enormous amount of debt. There was really no way to repay in any practical way. In addition, we hadn't gotten our gaming license yet, so my mother was like, well, what are we going to do? The bank was threatening to cut off financing and foreclose on the mortgages. And so we went and saw Steve Wynn. And my mother was sitting in his office, and we're all very close together at this table. And my mother was really close to him, and she started to cry. And Steve Wynn took her hand and very nicely but firmly said, "Debbie, you're in business now, and there's no place for that in business." And my mother looked at him and sucked it up, just stopped crying almost immediately. And he said, "Let's hear it. What's the stories?" So she said, "I can't even explain it." And so she threw it over to me. And I said, "Well, here's the situation financially, and we've applied for a gaming license, but it's sketchy because we have horrible finances, and I don't know that you could qualify." And not to mention the fact that some of the people that were involved in the hotel at that point were even criminals. There was a guy who had leased the hotel from Richard Hamlet who was connected to the Kansas City Mafia. I mean, it was just endless mess that Richard Hamlet had put everybody in for whatever reasons. We won't get into that right now. But anyway, Steve Wynn, at a certain point, was like, this is a big mess. And then he looks over at me and he goes, he said, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm 32 or whatever I was." And he says, "Well, what's wrong with you?" I thought, "I don't know anything about running hotels." He says, "Neither did I. You're perfect." And needless to say, that spurred then a meeting where we've had to fly all the way back to Syracuse, New York, to the lenders who were also doing the timeshare part of the property, the financing for timeshare, as well as had the mortgage on the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing happened there. They said, "Well, we'll renew the mortgages under one condition, if he takes over." I'm like, why is everybody pointing to me? I've never run a public
You didn't
company.
even live in Las Vegas at the time.
Well, that didn't matter. But it's like, I don't know anything about running a public company or a casino. And they're like, "Yeah, but you won't steal from her. And that's what we need right now." And so they turned the entire project over to me. So everybody basically got forced to give me the whole project. But you know what? It was my privilege to step up for her.